When Ryan said, "This investment is foolproof, Dad. You won't regret trusting family." He didn't just sound confident, he sounded certain. We were sitting in my living room, the same room where I had once taught my daughter how to ride a bike, where I had opened my first bank account statement with shaking hands, where every photograph on the wall told the story of a life built carefully and honestly. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting the room in warm gold, the kind of light that makes you believe everything is safe. Ryan slid a thick folder across the table. Inside were glossy brochures, printed projections, clean charts, and signatures already in place. "Luxury apartments," he said. "The market is exploding. I've already invested everything I have." I noticed his hand resting on Emily's knee. My daughter looked at me with hopeful eyes. "We just want you with us on this," she said softly. I should have asked more questions. I should have taken the papers to my accountant. I should have listened to the quiet voice inside me. But I didn't. Because when your child looks at you with trust in their eyes, logic becomes very quiet. "I've worked my whole life for this money," I finally said. Ryan nodded. "Exactly why you should let it grow." He spoke about retirement security, generational wealth, future grandchildren. He spoke my language. By the time the sun had disappeared, I had signed. That night, I stood alone in the kitchen, looking at my reflection in the dark window, telling myself I had done the right thing. I had just invested my future. And I had no idea I was about to lose everything. For the first few weeks after the investment, everything seemed normal. Ryan sent cheerful messages in the family group chat, photos of construction sites, emails from partners, promises of progress. Emily called often, her voice light and excited, already talking about vacations we would take once the profits started coming in. I wanted to believe them. But unease doesn't announce itself. It grows quietly. The first crack appeared when my bank statement arrived. Instead of the confirmation documents Ryan promised, I saw unfamiliar withdrawals, large ones. I called him immediately. "Temporary transfers," he said quickly. "Paperwork issue. Happens all the time." I didn't like how fast he answered. A week later, I drove past the development site he had shown me. There was nothing there. Just an empty lot and a broken fence. My stomach tightened. When I asked him about it, he laughed. "Wrong address, Dad. I'll send you the correct one." He never did. Then the phone calls changed. Emily stopped calling as much. Ryan's messages became shorter. My questions were met with irritation instead of reassurance. One evening I overheard them arguing on the phone. Emily's voice was shaking. "You promised him," she said. That night, I opened the folder again. For the first time, I truly looked at the papers. And I realized something terrifying. My signature was on everything. But their names were barely anywhere. The cracks were spreading. And I was standing right in the middle of them. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It started with small silences. Ryan stopped answering my calls. Emily started avoiding my questions. The progress updates disappeared. One morning I drove to their apartment. The door was locked. Their car was gone. Neighbors said they had moved out 2 days earlier. No forwarding address. My chest felt hollow. I went straight to the bank. The manager's face went pale when he opened my file. "Sir, the account is empty. Not drained. Not low. Empty. Years of work. A lifetime of savings. Gone." I called Ryan again. Voicemail. I called Emily. No answer. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table until sunrise, staring at the wall, listening to the quiet tick of the clock that now sounded like a countdown. I finally went to the police. They listened. They nodded. They wrote things down. Then they said the word that broke me. Civil matter. Meaning. Family. Contracts. My mistake. I drove home in silence. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of tomorrow. The truth didn't come from Ryan. It came from someone I never expected. Emily. 3 days after the collapse, she appeared at my door. Her eyes were red. Her hands were shaking. She looked like a stranger standing in my hallway. "Dad," she whispered. I didn't know it would go this far. I let her in. She told me everything. There was no real investment, no development project, no partners. Ryan had been in debt for years. Gambling, crypto scams, bad loans, worse people. He needed money fast, and he had used my trust to get it. Emily said she believed him at first. She said she only realized the truth when it was too late, when the accounts were already emptied and the city felt unsafe. "Where is he?" I asked. She shook her head. "I don't know. He left 2 days ago." I looked at my daughter, my child, and understood that the worst betrayal isn't the money. It's the realization that the people you raised are capable of destroying you. That night, I didn't sleep. I wasn't thinking about the money anymore. I was thinking about what kind of future I had just been pushed into. For a long time, I sat with what Emily had told me. Not anger, not shock, just something heavy and cold in my chest. I had spent my life believing that hard work guaranteed safety. I was wrong. The reckoning came quietly. I sold the house, downsized, learned how to live with less. I forgave Emily, not because the wound was gone, but because carrying the anger was destroying me faster than the loss ever could. Ryan was eventually found. The money was mostly gone. The courts moved slowly, and the justice they offered felt thin and late. But something inside me shifted. I started over. A small job, a small apartment, a simple life. And slowly, peace returned. One evening, Emily sat beside me on a park bench. "I'm sorry," she said. I nodded. Sometimes forgiveness is the only wealth left. And it was enough. Life does not return to what it was. It becomes something else. A year after everything collapsed, I opened a small workshop near the park. Nothing grand, just enough to keep my hands busy and my mind steady. I repaired furniture, fixed old chairs, and restored broken things, the kind of work that reminded me that even what seems ruined can become useful again. Emily visited often. We didn't talk much about the past. Some wounds don't need reopening. They only need care. One afternoon, as sunlight poured through the shop window, she asked, "Do you regret trusting us?" I thought for a long time. "No," I finally said. "I regret losing myself after it happened." She smiled through her tears. That evening, I closed the shop and walked home slowly. The city lights glowed. Children laughed in the park. Life moved forward, whether we were ready or not. I had lost money. I had lost illusions. But I had not lost my heart. And that was everything. Time is strange. It doesn't heal everything, but it teaches you how to live with what remains. 3 years passed. The workshop became successful in its own quiet way. People in the neighborhood knew me, trusted me. Sometimes they came not for furniture, but for conversation. Broken chairs are easier to fix than broken hearts. Emily remarried. She invited me to the ceremony. I went, not because the past was gone, but because I finally understood that love does not disappear just because trust once broke. Sometimes it simply changes shape. One evening, after closing the shop, I found an old photograph in my pocket, me holding Emily as a baby. I stood there for a long time, the city humming around me, and realized something simple and powerful. Life did not end when everything was taken from me. It started again, quieter, wiser, stronger. And in the end, that was the real inheritance I passed on. On my 70th birthday, I wrote a letter. Not to Ryan, not to Emily, to myself. I wrote about the man I used to be, careful, proud, certain the world rewarded honesty. And the man I had become, quieter, softer, no longer afraid of losing what could be taken away. I never mailed the letter. I folded it and placed it inside the drawer of my workshop desk. Some lessons aren't meant to travel. They are meant to stay with you. That night, I walked home under a sky full of stars and finally understood something my wife used to say. You can lose everything and still have a life. And I did. Every Sunday morning, I sit on the same bench by the river. The water moves the way life does, quietly, without apology, without pause. One morning, a young man sat beside me. He looked tired, worried. My family betrayed me, he said suddenly. I listened. When he finished, I told him, pain doesn't make you smaller. It makes you clearer. He thanked me and walked away. I stayed there, watching the current, realizing something gentle and true. All that suffering did not end with me. It became something I could give away, understanding. And in that, I found peace. One evening, as the sun lowered itself into the river, I closed my workshop for the last time. My hands were tired, but my heart was calm. I walked to the park, sat on the familiar bench, and watched the city lights begin to glow. Children ran past me. Couples laughed. Somewhere, music played. Life was still beautiful. I thought of everything I had lost, and everything I had gained. Not wealth, not comfort, but wisdom. When I finally stood to leave, the sky was dark, the stars bright, and the world wide open. And I understood at last, the greatest investment I ever made was learning how to live again.